I was in the band in high school, and I was in a lot of different music organizations in high school. I liked being in a musical ensemble. I liked being at the sports games. Those two seemed to go naturally together. So I looked for what that outlet would be at Virginia when I first arrived in 2003. And at the time, that outlet was the pep band. And I didn't know really what the pep band was all about or what it stood for or how it was any different than a marching band. I just knew that this was the band at the sports games. So I actually was a member of the pep band for a number of football games. If I remember right, the first year I was here, which was one of the years when they were allowed to perform before the games, but not actually in the games. So I wore the orange vest for a little while. I don't remember how I exactly got wind that the marching band was going to be forming, but I remember being at that first meeting here in Old Cavalier, where we are now, with Mr. Peace. Woody Wingfield was there. I believe Dave Knight was there, and a number of the other folks who were in the band the first year, and hearing his vision, and that was very exciting. I came from a very disciplined high school marching band. We were very competitive, and hearing that we were going to shift to something a little more structured than the pep band was quite exciting. CB was a big part of my undergraduate experience here. Looking back at the time I was in the band, it was probably what I spent the most time on. Maybe if you added all classes together, that would be competitive. But as anyone knows who's looking at this video, it takes a lot of time to put a good on-field product together, particularly when you haven't had anything to build on in the past. So it was a big part of my experience. I remember I'd be excited to go to rehearsal every week, especially when we were brand new, because it was whatever we were doing was going to be done for the first time here. And the novelty in itself was really appealing to me. I don't think I thought a lot about what it meant for future generations at the time, but just the opportunity that we were figuring something out was really exciting. Plus the chance to play with a number of talented musicians, and the caliber of people here at Virginia was high, and then the caliber of the musicians was high. So being in a setting where we were putting good product on the field was quite exciting as well. Yeah, we're going back a number of years, so I don't know if I remember all the details of the drum major audition process. I vividly remember, so I was a section leader the first year of the band in the trombone section, and I don't know exactly how that happened, that people were leaders in the band who had no one had any experience in the band before. But I remember being a section leader, and I liked conducting in sectionals, and I liked, I respected the drum majors at the time, Wingfield and Logan Riddick, and I liked, I liked that idea of being a leader in the band and the opportunity to conduct. That was probably one of my secret career ambitions, is that I want to be a conductor of an orchestra or something like that. So I was interested in that, but I didn't have conducting experience. I wasn't a drum major in high school. And I didn't know if it was quite right for me. The drum major here was going to play a different role than the drum major of a competitive high school band was, so I didn't even know what it would look like other than what I saw Logan and Woody doing. So I wasn't even sure I was going to go for it. I vividly remember one basketball game the first year, well I guess it would have been the second year, and some of the others in the trombone section, I in the front, were organizing some cheer or some free throw distraction, something like that, and Peace, I don't remember what the exact words were. Mr. Peace said something to me at that game, like, this is why you need to be in the front of the band. And I took that as a hint that I should give it a go. And I guess he saw some leadership qualities in me. I liked organizing people, and again, I sort of like the conducting element, so I decided to give it a go and try out. I remember practicing a lot with Logan Riddick. I think I practiced with Sean McCroskey, who was a graduate assistant at the time, Drew Ross. I lived with David Knight at the time, so we would trade ideas back and forth. I worked a lot on my pattern. I'd never done it before. Just being sure there'd be something recognizable to the audience. I can't remember if there was an interview component or not about our vision for the band. That memory is lost on me, but I do remember coming to this building and conducting, I don't know if it was the concert band or a part of the CMB at the time, but I remember coming in this building and being as nervous as I've ever been about anything in my life. I don't know if I was nervous about being drum major or not being drum major, but it is lonely on that podium the first time you've been up there. And I don't know if we conducted God Bless America or Shenandoah, something like that. We were It might have even been Glory to Virginia. I can't remember what the exact songs were, but the audition went relatively well. I don't think I lost the band or anything like that. And then had a good follow-up interview with Sean and Drew. And I very vividly remember getting a call from Peace that I was going to be one of the drum majors the next year. And that was certainly one of my fondest memories here. I got that phone call, and then Dave Knight was one of my closest friends who I lived with here. And within seconds of hanging up the phone with Peace, I had the call from Dave that he was going to be another one of the drum majors as well. And that was quite a special day. I don't remember much about the first day as drum major on the field, but I do remember, again, the first time in this auditorium here was lonely. And when you're out there, it can be a little lonely as well. Because you're up there on the podium, there's nobody else physically around you, and there aren't many people who are doing what you're doing as well. There are two other drum majors on other podiums, so you're not necessarily connected. You're not in close proximity to them. You hope that you're doing the same thing in terms of leading the band at the same sort of timing and count. It felt special to be up there. You sort of look around at the crowd and kind of imagine people are looking at you, and that part of it was kind of neat. But there was also a big responsibility, because you sure didn't want to send the band off in the wrong direction. So I felt that sort of personal pressure to try to keep us on track. Now, the drum major may not do anything. This is like one of the unsolved mysteries of my marching band experience. If the drum majors weren't there, the band would probably still function without much of a problem, because the drum line does an excellent job of keeping time. But try not to mess that up. Often it seemed like Mr. Peace was standing right next to the podium, and he'd have his hand sitting on the podium right near where my feet were. And every once in a while there'd be a tap on the podium that was not from my feet. And I never knew exactly what that was, but it was probably a sign that things were starting to deviate a little bit from what was expected. We have to sort of reel it in quickly. So I remember that vividly. I remember being terrible at Rugby Road. For whatever reason, I was one of the conducters for Rugby Road on the center podium. I could never get the ending right. And I think I messed it up in a game once. And as special as it felt to be up there on the podium, it was 100 times worse to mess something up, because you felt like however many people you had in the stands, 50,000, 60,000, they all saw you make that mistake. So isolated, pride, responsibility, and excitement about the opportunity to maybe encourage people a little bit to play a little louder, more spirited. All that was part of it. I don't know if difficult is the right word. I'd have a hard time looking back on my experience and remembering much kind of negative in the way of I'm not really happy here, or things are going in a different direction. I remember at the start, because I came from a very regimented high school band, and that was all I knew, was we're all going to be in step and we're all going to be in tune. And as might not surprise people watching this video, when you're bringing together, what do we have, 170 people the first time, or literally the first time this band had existed, it might not have been the case that everybody was in step or in tune. And it didn't seem like there was a lot of push for that to be the case. And that was surprising to me. But looking back on it, I don't think I recognized what the priorities were. And maybe some of those really fine details that are going to get you a high score for adjudicators in the high school band circuit don't matter in the big picture of putting on an entertaining product and changing out the product every 2 weeks. I don't think I quite recognized at the time exactly what was involved in everything you just learned is going to be out the door, and we're going to start something brand new for the next 2 weeks. So at the beginning, I do remember being really curious about that. I remember being sort of on the ground, turf field, getting people's toes up in the air for a good roll step. And yeah, it's important to, I think there's still an emphasis on technique. I don't want to suggest that there's poor technique or anything like that, but we had a bigger picture that only became clearer sort of further down the road. So that'd be one early challenge I remember. It was tough learning the music as the conductor. I think I was much better at learning the music and memorizing it as a player than a conductor for whatever reason. Maybe I wasn't familiar with the scores. Maybe I was interested in other logistical aspects of being drum major versus learning the tunes. And I do remember feeling at times unprepared up there on the podium and sort of hoping that it all clicked in my head for the first time up there with the whole band going. And it's not necessarily the position you want to be in, live in front of the band for the whole time, hoping it goes just right. It was early on, I think, that I dropped the ball on that one, and was clearly unprepared, and Peace may have called me out right in front of the band, but I didn't make that mistake again. We were going to do our homework on knowing the score ahead of time. That was a good learning experience. One of the interesting parts of being drum major was figuring out who was going to conduct which song. And Woody Wingfield was one of the 3 drum majors the year I was. And it always felt like we should defer to Woody, let him select which song he was going to conduct. I don't remember even how that process occurred, but I do remember there was one time when I didn't voice. There was one of the 3 songs that we were doing at halftime, and I wish I could remember what it was, but I remember I didn't wind up conducting it, and that like stuck with me for a couple weeks. But it's all a team effort at the end of the day, so it didn't really matter. Something few people know about my C&D experience may be the story about why I left the band. I don't know if that's well known or not. I certainly never. I didn't do a good job of reaching out to the people in the band when I left, saying that I was leaving or explaining why it happened. I'm sure to some people, especially those who didn't know me that well, I may have just disappeared. So I always felt a little guilty and unsure about that, and I didn't necessarily get too close to the band the first year afterwards because I didn't know what the feelings were. So I was a reasonable golfer in high school, and part of the decision to come to Virginia was that there was a long golf season here. I wasn't any sort of world beater. It was just the case, if I got anywhere north of where I grew up in New Jersey for high school, if I had gone to college anywhere in the north, I might have had a chance to play on the golf team. And that was something I was always sort of curious about. Anywhere in the south, that was out of the question. So of course, coming south to Virginia, that was out of the question. But my game improved in my time at Virginia. And the summer after I was drum major for the first year, things really progressed. I had a good relationship with the professional staff over at Birdwood, and the announcement came around that there would be a walk-on tryout to join the golf team. And the tryout was either during or just after band camp. And as many of the people watching this video know, band camp is a really time-consuming activity, and I wanted to do both. I wanted to be in the band my last year, and I wanted to try out for the golf team. Like, both would just not be possible. Or I couldn't envision a way that both would be possible. I had been an RA and drum major, and even that was tough. So how were both of these things going to work? And I went back and forth on it. I couldn't imagine leaving the band to pursue my individual dream of maybe playing college golf. I couldn't let that dream go either. So I was torn about this all summer, and we went and played with the professional staff at Birdwood and a couple of the guys who worked there. We went and played some nice course in Virginia. I said, all right, this is going to be the test. If I have a good day here, I'm going to go for this golf. And as luck would have it, I had a good day there. Oh no, how am I going to do this? So I set up a meeting with Cook and Peace. The band offices were still in University Hall at the time. Small offices, fans blowing. And I walked in at the time, and Peace was running late, and Mr. Cook was there, Drew Cook. And I was just about in tears through 20 minutes of this meeting, saying, I'd really like to give this golf thing a go, and I think it's going to prevent me from coming back to the band. And this was pretty late in the summer, too. This might have been mid-July, late July. So we were on the precipice of the next season. And I recognized that I was potentially putting them in an awkward position, having someone who was assigned some leadership responsibilities all of a sudden disappearing. So I'm there sort of I wasn't exactly in tears, but I was very worked up. And Mr. Cook was not very happy about this either, of course, and as I didn't expect him to be. So we go for 20 or 25 minutes. How can you do this to the band? I don't know, but I have to give this a go. I've always dreamed about college golf, this and that. So then Peace walks in. And I thought Mr. Cook was going to be the forgiving one. So Peace walks in, and I already had a feeling sick to my stomach, and it amplified 10 times. And Peace, for whatever reason, understood. He said, if that's what you want to do, it seems like you made up your mind, best of luck. And I don't know why that happened. it struck me as odd at the time, almost like I was getting off a little easy. And Peace is a golfer, so maybe he understood it a little bit. But yeah, so I decided to try out for the golf team instead of returning to marching band my last year as an undergrad at UVA. Or I guess it would have been my first year as a grad student. It would have been my first year as a grad student. I did not make the golf team, so the joke is still on me. For all of you who are thinking, how could I have done this to the band? I didn't make the golf team, nor was I particularly close in the tryout either. But yeah, that was the story of how I left the band. And I think I remain on good terms with Peace and Cook and the rest of the band, or many of the band members to this day. I still play golf with Peace from time to time. So that was how it happened. Another thing that people may not know, those who weren't around, the first 2 years of the band was what we talked about before, how I was so concerned with people's marching technique. And I don't want to say I was yelling at my peers out there, but I was probably yelling at my peers out there to be in step or have their toe high or roll step or coming to a perfect stop. Those memories. Since I left the band, my relationship with Mr. Peace and Mr. Cook is primarily one that centers around meeting at the golf course from time to time and reliving old memories. And when we are lucky, having the chance to play some golf together. And I really appreciate that when we have the chance to do so. When I was in the band, my first year, and maybe other people felt like this too, other people felt like this too, that I was trying to make a good impression. And I think I did an okay job of that my first year, trying to play the best I could, be prepared, and I felt like it was sort of a clean relationship with the staff at the time. Mr. Phillips was the assistant director my first year, and Mr. Peace was the director. And then Mr. Cook came. So then, in the second year, everything changed as drum major, and the expectations, I don't know if they were ratcheted up, but you were directly interfaced with the expectations on a day-to-day basis. And instead of feeling like I was prepared, I felt like I was just trying to tread water a lot. And I don't want to say on record that I was afraid of Mr. Peace or Mr. Cook, but it very much became a matter of just hanging in there and being sure you were as best prepared as possible. I don't remember any animosity. Like we said, occasionally had our mistakes and got in trouble or were a little underprepared or things weren't going quite right. But that wasn't, I don't look at it as anything personal. I think we had a great personal relationship, and anytime there was any tension on the field or in practice or behind the scenes, that was all focused on having the best possible product on the field and having the best experience for all the members of the band. I also felt like there was no greater advocate for the students in the band than the professional staff. Mr. Peace, Mr. Cook, it seemed like they always had our back. And whether or not that was scheduling rehearsals or being sure that we had a decent charter bus to go to an away game, they were really, really advocating for us to have the best possible treatment as college marching band musicians. And as I look back on it, I don't know if I quite realized that at the time, but I think it would have been nice if I could have said, if I had recognized at the time, I think it would have been nice to point it out to some of the other members, say, not many students around the university are being treated as well as we are. We're in other college marching bands. Take a moment to appreciate it.